Doris Duke once stunned a group of museum staffers by quietly offering to fund an entire restoration project the moment she noticed a painting in disrepair. She'd only gone in expecting a quick tour, but the sight of a masterpiece falling, victim to neglect, triggered an almost immediate generosity. Few knew she'd walked in that day, and even fewer realized the magnitude of her wealth. Yet, for those who truly understood Doris Duke, heiress to the Duke tobacco fortune, this kind of spur-of-the-moment philanthropy wasn't surprising at all. She was often unpredictable, capable of grand gestures and abrupt decisions that shaped her reputation as a figure both glamorous and inscrutable. Her story unfolds at the intersection of extraordinary privilege and enduring personal yearnings, painting the picture of a woman who tried relentlessly to chart her own course in a world that seemed to define her by her inheritance. Born on November 22, 1912, Doris Duke entered a realm of immense wealth and even greater expectations. Her father was James Buchanan Duke, a titan in the tobacco industry and the driving force behind the American Tobacco Company. He was also a pioneer in hydroelectric power and established the Duke Endowment, a philanthropic endeavor that left its imprint on institutions like Duke University. He and Doris's mother, Nanaline Holt Inman Duke, lived comfortably among the upper crust of the early 20th century United States, a time when industrial magnates wielded vast influence. Big-name families like the Rockefellers and Vanderbilts defined wealth for the Gilded Age, and the Dukes were every bit as powerful in their sphere. However, behind every lavish lifestyle often lies hidden tension or heartbreak, and Doris's story would be marked by both from a young age. She was only about 12 when James Buchanan Duke died in 1925. His passing changed the arc of her life irrevocably. Already an only child, Doris found herself heir to a staggering fortune, rumored at the time to be worth well over $50 million. The press quickly dubbed her the richest girl in the world, a label that would stick for decades. Of course, inheriting that kind of money as a child came with heavy burdens. Doris often felt that adults around her tried to manipulate or control her future. Many had an opinion on how she should live, spend her money, or invest in philanthropic projects. Even those with good intentions sometimes forced her to remain in the public eye, a place she rarely found comfortable. Growing up in the 1920s, a period marked by roaring economic growth and social transformation, Doris received a classic upbringing for a young socialite. She studied in elite schools, dined among the well-heeled, and learned all the mannerisms expected of a high society debutante. Yet she occasionally showed signs of rebellion. She disliked the mindless ritual of garden parties and afternoon teas that so many of her peers seemed to relish. Instead, she nurtured her curiosity about world cultures and harbored a keen sense of adventure. Even as a teen, she showed interest in journalism and once wrote small pieces for local publications under a pseudonym, a reflection of her attempt to find an identity beyond money and privilege. Her mother, Nanaline, was known for her lavish spending habits and her own brand of cool elegance. Some accounts suggest that mother and daughter were not particularly close, separated by generational differences and conflicting personalities. Doris resented being showcased at society functions, while Nanaline believed it was part of the Duke family's image to see and be seen. To reconcile these tensions, Doris increasingly retreated into private passions, including music and travel. One of the earliest glimpses of her philanthropic leanings emerged in small gestures, like quietly paying for friends' schooling or covering medical bills for staff members. She wanted to help people but disliked the publicity that often came with large-scale donations. This tension between an inheritance that demanded public attention and a personal desire for low-key generosity would define her philanthropic style. When Doris reached adulthood, the global climate had changed drastically. The stock market crash of 1929 and the ensuing Great Depression left millions jobless, hungry, and hopeless. Though cushioned from financial ruin by her father's well-structured fortune, Doris could not ignore the suffering around her. She donated anonymously to soup kitchens and relief funds, wanting to avoid fanfare that might overshadow the seriousness of the crisis. This quiet approach was a precursor to the philanthropic empire she would later build, one that emphasized personal connection to causes rather than mere check writing for good press. In 1935, at the age of 22, Doris married James H.R. Cromwell, a socialite and politician who later served as the U.S. Minister to Canada. The wedding was a grand event, covered breathlessly by newspapers that had already labeled Doris the $1 million baby. Cromwell introduced her to political circles and a different sort of high society where senators and diplomats mingled. At first, Doris found it fascinating, immersing herself in policy discussions and philanthropic causes that aligned with government efforts. But she quickly grew jaded by the superficial aspects of political life. The marriage itself was marked by ups and downs, further complicated by Cromwell's political ambitions. She partially financed some of his pursuits, which raised eyebrows among those who felt he was using her fortune to fuel his career. This tension, combined with broader incompatibilities, led to their divorce in 1943. Doris walked away more determined than ever to shape her own life, but also painfully aware that being an heiress made her a magnet for those who saw her primarily as a bank account. A lesser-known episode from this period involved Doris's interest in journalism. Tired of being the subject of headlines, she wrote a series of articles under an assumed name for a small paper, detailing the experiences of an ordinary traveling American in Europe. Friends who knew about this hush-hush venture recalled how thrilled she was to receive feedback on her writing skills, rather than on her name or her inherited wealth. The articles themselves didn't revolutionize journalism, but they gave her a taste of anonymity and creative expression, two things she would forever crave. With the outbreak of World War II, Doris sought to do more than stay on the sidelines. She volunteered with the Office of Strategic Services, helping with canteen and welfare work for Allied troops in various locations. Some claim she used her knowledge of foreign languages to assist in minor intelligence-gathering efforts. While the details remain somewhat hazy, it's clear she viewed the war as an opportunity to be part of something bigger than society gatherings. She grew more confident traveling under adversity, even visiting remote locales to hand out supplies. She found that acts of direct service gave her a sense of purpose money alone couldn't fulfill. After the war, Doris's life entered a phase of exploration and cultural fascination. She developed an enduring love for the Middle East and South Asia, collecting Islamic art, textiles, and architectural ideas that would profoundly influence her later home designs. One of her greatest personal achievements was the construction of Shangri, an estate in Honolulu, Hawaii, completed in the late 1930s but continually refined over decades. Blending Islamic motifs with Hawaiian landscapes, Shangri served as a haven for Doris. She would retreat there to study Islamic culture, experiment with horticulture, and host close friends. This remarkable property, featuring intricate tilework from Morocco and architectural elements reminiscent of Iran and Syria, became a living testament to her eclectic tastes and global perspective. Over time, it also became a center for philanthropic hospitality, as she opened parts of it to scholars and artists focusing on Islamic culture. This was not a publicity stunt. It grew from her genuine desire to foster cross-cultural understanding. Still, Doris's romantic life remained complicated. In 1947, she married again, this time to a man named Porfirio Rubirosa, a Dominican diplomat and reputed international playboy. The union caused quite a stir in gossip columns, given Rubirosa's reputation for lavish living and rumored affairs. Many believed he was seduced by the Duke fortune, and skeptics expected the marriage to crumble quickly. They weren't wrong. The marriage lasted barely a year. Doris, heartbroken yet again, became more guarded about her personal life. She confided to a close friend that she felt like a walking prize, something to be claimed rather than cherished. These hurtful experiences reinforced her desire for privacy. Moving forward, she found it increasingly difficult to trust potential partners, always worried their interest in her might be purely financial. In the midst of personal disappointments, her philanthropic activities blossomed. By the 1950s, she had begun systematically funding the arts, medicine, and environmental conservation. She endowed a variety of research projects, sometimes in her name, but often anonymously. She was especially interested in medical breakthroughs, perhaps influenced by the health struggles of friends and staff members. She poured millions into hospitals and research institutions, hoping to lessen human suffering in ways that had nothing to do with social prestige. In a letter that surfaced years later, she wrote to one foundation head, "I'd like to see our money do tangible good, real help for those who might never get it otherwise. Not parlor talk, not long speeches, but real cures." It's one of the rare glimpses into her unwavering commitment to helping others in a hands-on manner. Yet Doris was no stranger to scandal. One significant controversy erupted around 1966 when a confidant died under ambiguous circumstances at one of her homes. Rumors swirled that Doris had been there and might have played a role, albeit accidental, in the tragedy. Official investigations found no evidence of foul play, but the tabloids ran wild with speculation linking it to Doris's personal struggles and the supposed presence of prescription medications. She retreated from many of her social connections, shutting out acquaintances who might leak details to the press. Historians suggest that this period marked a turning point. She became more guarded, more reclusive, and less inclined to fraternize with the flashy side of high society. Another controversy eventually concerned the care of her adopted daughter, a young woman named Chandi Hefner, who came into Doris's life in the early 1980s. Their relationship began with a sense of genuine warmth. Doris felt an immediate connection with Chandi, seeing her almost as a spiritual child. However, the relationship turned sour amid allegations of financial disputes and manipulations by third parties. Doris disinherited Chandi, leading to a legal battle that raised eyebrows once more. Was Doris, in her later years, being influenced by staff or new confidants to cut people out of her life? Or had Chandi truly violated the trust between them? The exact details remain murky, but the affair pulled Doris into a spotlight she despised, compelling her to defend her decisions in court. The press revived the old narrative of Doris as a lonely, complicated woman with too much money and not enough genuine companionship. Her personal staff also became a source of public intrigue. Doris was known for both lavish generosity and severe dismissals, depending on her assessment of an employee's loyalty. Some staff recounted heartwarming episodes, Doris paying for their children's education or surprising them with large bonuses. Others spoke of being abruptly fired over minor disputes. The tabloids loved painting her as mercurial, but those close to her said she was simply protective of her inner circle, having been burned too many times by betrayals and feigned friendships. In her later years, Doris's relationship with the media soured further. She came to see the press as an invasive force that trivialized her philanthropic work by focusing on her private life. She gave almost no interviews, preferring to release statements through attorneys or representatives. Meanwhile, she continued to expand her philanthropic reach, particularly in the realm of art and culture. She provided significant endowments for Islamic art research, financed archaeological digs in the Middle East, and funded marine conservation projects in Hawaii. She also contributed to civil rights organizations and environmental groups, albeit discreetly. People sometimes discovered that a large anonymous donation traced back to Doris Duke only after the fact. During the 1970s and 1980s, she wrestled with health issues, including problems with her knees and hips that limited her mobility. Yet she soldiered on, determined to see the world. She traveled to remote areas, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, parts of Africa, always seeking cultural exchanges that could enrich her sense of global citizenship. She rarely traveled with large entourages, preferring a small team who understood her need for both privacy and spontaneity. On more than one occasion, she extended her stay in a country by several weeks, simply because she was entranced by local music or wanted to explore historical sites in depth. For an heiress often painted as aloof, these trips showed a thirst for real connections, for experiences that transcended the superficial world she was born into. Doris's personal diaries from the 1980s, later revealed to a biographer, showcased a woman who lamented her failure to find a stable romantic partnership. She wrote about her sense of displacement, having homes around the globe but rarely feeling at home anywhere. She struggled with trusting people. How could she know if they valued her as a human being rather than as a key to a fortune? These pages, filled with both loneliness and flashes of contentment, illustrate the emotional complexities behind her carefully guarded exterior. Friends and historians often describe Doris as an enigma, even to those who saw her daily. Another wave of scandal struck in the final years of her life, revolving around allegations of possible elder abuse or manipulation by staff. Some employees or acquaintances claimed that she wasn't fully aware of certain financial transactions, or that she'd grown paranoid, suspecting everyone of being after her money. Lawyers, personal managers, and butlers clashed in court over her well-being. While it's impossible to parse every detail, the legal disputes highlight just how vulnerable even the wealthiest individuals can become if their mental or physical health deteriorates. Doris fought back through lawyers, maintaining she was fully competent. Yet the recurring theme of lawsuits and contested loyalties overshadowed her final chapter, offering a stark reminder that all the wealth in the world can't necessarily guarantee peace of mind. Doris Duke died on October the 28th, 1993, at her home in Beverly Hills, California. She was 80 years old. The immediate aftermath of her death erupted into another swirl of controversy. The caretaker and butler, who had become her closest confidant, Bernard Lafferty, was named co-executor of her estate, a decision that stunned many. Critics questioned his influence on her final decisions, while supporters argued that Doris simply trusted him above all others at that time. Her will, valued at around $1.2 billion, established the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, among other trusts, ensuring that her philanthropic pursuits would continue well into the future. Yet no final act in Doris's life could escape scrutiny. Family members and former employees challenged parts of the will, spawning more legal battles. Though the courts eventually upheld her primary wishes, the extended disputes left a bitter taste. For a woman whose name was once synonymous with the richest girl, Doris's cultural significance runs deeper than her fortune. She challenged the stereotypes of the idle heiress, delving into philanthropic arenas with an earnestness that belied her aristocratic upbringing. Her homes, especially Shangri-La and Honolulu, remain iconic for their fusion of global art and architecture. She advanced the cause of Middle Eastern art appreciation in the West and contributed heavily to scientific research, conservation, and the performing arts. For instance, her foundation funded dance programs, jazz education, and oceanographic studies reflecting her wide-ranging interests. She also left behind a complicated blueprint for how immense wealth can be both a blessing and a curse. Her life story resonates as a cautionary tale about isolation at the top, about the pitfalls of inherited fame, and about the quiet ways that personal trauma can echo through philanthropic gestures. In the wake of her death, the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation and her other philanthropic arms carried on. Through them, her name lives in the performing arts grants, environmental conservation funds, support for child well-being programs, and the restoration of historical Islamic artifacts. Shangri-La was transformed into a center for Islamic arts and culture, allowing future generations to share in Doris's fascination with the beauty of that heritage. Visitors often remark on the sense of tranquility that pervades its halls, a quiet homage to Doris's dream of blending diverse cultural influences. This perhaps is her real legacy, a bridging of worlds, a reminder that curiosity and open-mindedness can be the greatest gifts one can share. And that wraps up today's video. If this video resonated with you, please give it a like, leave a comment with your feedback, and subscribe to stay updated on upcoming videos. Appreciate you watching.